Hello everybody, my name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, episode 24, Spike Vegeta. And here he is, Spike Vegeta. How you doing, Spike?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this morning? I'm already on episode 24.
Dude, we are a few months into it. I never thought I'd get this far, to be honest with you.
Yeah, a lot of these. So I've done a number of interviews for podcasts and whatnot, and almost always it's like, "What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 2." Like, okay, we'll see how long this.
Right.
Episode 24. That's already something to be proud of. I know I was excited whenever we would get up to higher episodes. So
I'm glad you brought that up because, okay, so I have to tell you something before we get started, and you're actually one of the reasons that I started this whole thing. And I know this may be insignificant to you, but when we did an interview for SGDQ or AGDQ, I can't remember, one of the GDQs. I think it was SGDQ.
One of them. They all run together in my head. Yeah.
But before we did the interview, we were just sitting on the couch, shooting the breeze, chatting video games, chatting life. And I'm like, there are so many interesting and intelligent and really people that are just so cool and fun in speedrunning. What a great opportunity just to chat with them. And so that was kind of the idea of like, I could just do a podcast, make up a reason to talk to really interesting people, you know?
Just to have conversation. Exactly. Yeah.
There's the speedrunning community is so diverse. I've met people from all walks of life who stream full time, who just speedrun for fun. And it's, that's the kind of the whole idea, just to game developers, just to talk with people who are passionate about what they do, you know?
Absolutely.
So let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about your video games. When did you first start playing video games? How did you when did you first start? What are your earliest memories?
My earliest memory of playing video games was, so I am the fourth of 5 children in my family. The first 2 were brothers, and the third was my older sister, and even she liked playing video games. So like there was tons of video games in my family. They grew up playing stuff like Mario Brothers. I vividly remember watching my older brothers playing Super Mario Brothers 3 on like a TV we had in my mother's van on like family trips and whatnot. My earliest memory was actually playing Duck Hunt and, having those sharpshooter skills of getting right up on the TV screen and blasting things away with the light gun they gave you, and not understanding why that was a problem, why my brothers would laugh at me. Yeah.
Duck
as
Hunt
far as like, go ahead.
No, Duck Hunt's one of the. I love Duck Hunt, and it's my wife. That's like one of her earliest memories of video games too. She's like, and I think it sticks out because it's got a different controller. It was such a different type of game,
Yeah, maybe it like made more sense to me as a kid because I was watching one of my nieces play Sonic Mania a couple years ago, and she was maybe like 5 at the time. And it's just, she's trying to shake it and everything. Like it doesn't necessarily make sense. All these buttons, what does what? Whereas like with a light gun, you're like, okay, point it at the duck. It makes sense.
When you were playing as a kid, I'm curious. I'm not sure any of us actually remember beating games, but were you the type that I'm trying to get a feel of or a sense of when speedrunning became an issue? Like, did you like to beat games all the way through, or were you competitive at all? What was kind of the earliest video games? For you?
So it was awesome growing up to finding out speedrunning was a thing because I felt like in a way I was speedrunning when I was a kid from the start because we didn't have a lot of video games. I vividly remember growing up and I had like 3 video games for the Super Nintendo we would play. Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, and Mega Man X. All relatively short games, relatively easy games to get through. We had a big old clock right above the TV station where we would play our games at. And so I would get to the point where I'd be like, let me see if I can do it a little faster this time. Legitimately back in 1995 live split or whatever.
That's before Andrew G. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I would say like, oh, okay, I can beat Donkey Kong Country in an hour, whatever it was. And the next time, like, wait till it hits. I would like wait till it hit the top of the hour. So they're having like 15 minutes sometimes. See if I can get there before like the 58-minute mark or something or whatever it might be. Which I thought was like, okay, it must mean I'm just a complete nerd. And like, that's like, I'm the only one who would be into this sort of thing. So when I found Speed Demos Archive in 2004, I was like, oh, I have a community who's into the same weird stuff with gaming that I am.
And that's kind of common. So the folks who have been speedrunning for more than 5 or 10 years or so, the SDA comes up quite often. And what I'm just always curious, like, what's it like when you discover and you see that, I actually, let me back this up. Did SDA have TAS videos back then? Like, was TAS a thing at that point? Had people seen tool assisted speedruns?
Yes. So
Okay.
I guess the like first time, because I remember, so 2004, I was in high school. Yeah. It was probably 2002, 2003 that the famous Super Mario Brothers 3 speed
Right.
run was released on the internet where everyone nuts. Oh, he's beaten it in 11 minutes or whatever. And of course, it came out later on that like this was someone borrowing a task and
Yes, yeah,
throwing it
exactly.
up on the internet. Borrowing, we'll call it, as a nice word. Uh,
Right.
so like people knew what that was. Yeah, it definitely existed at the time 2004 in 2004 when STA expanded
Got
to
it.
have more than like Quake and Doom runs and whatnot. Started
Cool.
having more like Nintendo based stuff.
And what were some of the ones that kind of like sparked your imagination? What were some of the early SDA speedruns that you saw that got you going?
It was funny. One of them that stood out to me. I had only played a little bit of as a kid. Was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
And it was the simplest strat, but strats always stuck out to me. Like, oh, this is so creative. Was an early room in Link to the Past. And you still do it to this day. It's the room where you get the boomerang,
Huh.
and there's a guard there who's guarding the chest. You have to kill him to get a key to go through a door later on, and you kill the guard, knocking him back into the wall. You open up the boomerang. To the right is the guard, dying and dropping the key. Instead of walking over to get the key, you throw the boomerang, let the boomerang grab the key. You're already running to the door, and then the key catches up to you as you're like entering the next room. And it's just a little thing. It's like realistically it probably saves a second or two in the speed run. But that was the first time I thought of speed running strats as a thing. And I saw that the first day I learned that Speed Demos Archive was a thing on the internet. And that just blew my mind. I've been hooked to speedrunning for 16 years since then.
What is the first game that you considered or that you even attempted a speedrun with?
Yeah, so I guess if we consider like in the modern era, we take away my childhood speedrunning, my clear world records I was going for. It was Kingdom Hearts 2, actually, back in 2006. So I had been paying attention to Speed Demos Archive throughout 2004, 2005, always looking when new runs would pop up. It was a much smaller community, and runs were like, every month or so, there'd be a couple runs that come out. Kingdom Hearts 2 had come out, and I found a website, Japanese website, Ultimania or something, some sort of website that tracked speed run times for different games. And it was probably some random set of runners for it. But I saw Kingdom Hearts 2 beaten in 5 hours and 25 minutes or something. And I was like, oh, I think I can maybe do that. And that was right when the game came out. So I got a 5 hour and 6 minute time. And I thought, oh, I must be great then. So I submitted that to SJ, found out that time was terrible, and slowly lowered the time, as we find out with speedrunning.
Right. But
yeah, that was my first run.
a lot of those, from my experience and some of my research, a lot of the Japanese sites actually still exist where they share times. Just, SRC is not the only thing in Japan. And it's interesting that the communities, especially because you run a lot of games that have Japanese counterparts to them. So it's interesting that those, is there any, crossover or anything like that community wise from US runners to Japanese runners to some of these RPGs like Kingdom Hearts and other games?
Yeah, I mean, you'll definitely have some runners from Japan reach out to us. I feel like it's become more and more over the years, but I do think it's also on a case by case basis. Obviously, those are the two biggest hubs, right. US based and Japanese based for speedrunners. Right. And yeah, it's awesome whenever we get to share strats and whatnot. I personally love, I don't know if you're into the Olympics or anything.
I love the Olympics, yeah.
Yeah, I love representation of different countries. It makes everything feel, I guess, in a way, almost more legit.
Mm-hmm, totally agree.
I love looking at a speedrun.com leaderboard and seeing like, man, there isn't an American in the top 7. Like, you got people from Brazil, you got a French runner up there, you got Japanese runners. I like to imagine this world like 10 years from now, right. We're having like the speedrun Olympics or something. Right. Representing France, representing Italy, whatever.
Cheese in the chat says World Championship of Speedrunning when? It's
exactly.
It's such a great idea. I mean, and I do have to say, we'll get to it a little bit later, but like the GDQ thing, we have seen every year now more and more international runners show up. It's not just, American centric, which is kind of nice. So the funnest thing of doing the podcast has been to research people whose speedruns I really respect and I really enjoy and stuff like that. And going through your well has been quite an experience. I guess, what was the first run that might have been accepted to SDA for you? Like, do you remember which one might have been your first accepted run?
Yeah, so it actually was that Kingdom Hearts
it was
2
Kingdom Hearts.
run
Okay,
back.
cool.
Yeah. It's here's what I'll say about SDA back in the day. Their standards, I would never say were low, but like they were trying to build their database.
Sure.
So they heard someone say like Kingdom Hearts games, and that was a popular series, obviously, still a popular series, even before its 14-year wait in between games coming out. So they were excited to get stuff like Kingdom Hearts 2 up there. But I remember also my second run, I submitted Rayman 2 to go up there because I love the Rayman series. I put Kingdom Hearts 1 up there at some point. I had a number of different runs go up on SDA those first couple of years.
Very cool. I'm glad that SDA still exists in some form because
it does. Yes.
Because it's tough when speedrun.com hasn't ported everything over from SDA. That some communities have been better than others, like trying to bring those times and those videos in. But it's good that some of this stuff isn't getting lost. Like that we still have it. We can see our run from 10 years ago. In some cases. So that's kind of nice. I'm curious, when did you? So as I was going down the rabbit hole here, and I start looking at games done quick, I didn't realize how early on that you started. Before you got associated, or you started? How did your association, or how did you get started with games done quick? When did that all start?
Yeah, so I guess the first event I went to, the first GDQ event period would have been Classic Games Done Quick 2010 and early of 2010. And I started watching immediately. And what was interesting to me was, again, going back to the Speed Demos Archive era, everything moves so much slower. I guess it's kind of telling about technology in general as we, if you wanted to send a letter to someone years and years ago, it was a long time before they got that letter, before they got a response. Now everything's instant. You're texting. No, you're sending an email at worst. So even like looking at SDA times, people would say like, oh, you go on the forum, I found this new strategy for this speed run. I'm going to implement it in this run. And you'll know in 8 months, once the run gets verified and you can see what it is. So all of a sudden GDQ starts happening. And I realized like, oh, now there's this live aspect to speedrunning we can now watch. And there's an entire marathon of stuff where, oh, they're going to be running Chrono Trigger at the end of this. And I've been wondering what Chrono Trigger strats there are for years now. And I'm going to just see it live. I'm going to see it live, and also what runners do when they mess up. Because when you have a finished speedrun up on like Speed Demos Archive, I almost think of that as a movie. So now my theater background, live streaming, doing runs at marathons was like live theater. Let's see what happens if I mess up. How do I go about fixing that all of a sudden? It's improv. I thought that was super cool. So in the summer of 2011, I started going to Summer Games Done Quick, which was just a little 3-day event at the time up in Essentia's house. She had 25 people over, which is a lot, which is a tiny GDQ compared to the 3,000 people that go now. But at the time, it was like this poor woman, her husband, and her already, I think, 2 or 3 kids at that point.
You can see him walking around in the video.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I had them involved in a couple of my runs back in the day. It was a lot of people to have there once, but not really understanding what this little $25,000 charity event was going to grow into for millions of dollars later on.
You just brought it up, and let's go down the rabbit hole just a bit. You brought up a theater background, and one of the things, I'm not sure if you mentioned it or I saw it in text somewhere, but that part of doing the events was, it's part of it is a performance, and you're trying to entertain and these kind of things. Can you tell me a little bit about your theater background? And because even from early on, you were trying to entertain. It wasn't just about the gameplay, which by the way is totally fine as well. There's great, when you start streaming, you can approach it any different way, but I love the performance aspect of it. So when did you start getting into theater and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I love Twitch for that reason, that you can be entertaining from a lot of different standpoints and express yourself in a lot of different ways, and it can be acceptable and different audiences can find you. But yes, in my theater background, so as a kid, I remember there were these poems that we were asked to do in back in probably like 1st, 2nd grade or something. I was the only kid in the class that was too terrified to get up in front of all the parents and my peers and do the poem. It was just reading a little poem and trying to give me the shortest one. I was terrified. I don't know what clicked. I remember getting into stand-up comedy when I was like 13, 14 years old and watching people doing jokes, telling jokes that I was like, as a 13-year-old, I had no idea what that meant. Pretty raunchy stuff.
Yeah.
But I just thought the way they told the joke was funny. So I got into it in that way. And eventually in high school, getting exposed to my high school theater. Got to be in plays like The Diary of Anne Frank, Larry Shoes, The Foreigner, musicals like Anything Goes. Funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. Got to do a bunch of different shows, and I loved, I think more than anything else in performance, making people laugh. Because I always believed, even from a young age, that if you're making someone laugh, you generally are almost 100% of the time only making their day better.
Right.
And I just thought that was really, really cool. And it touched my heart quite a bit. And so that's kind of, I guess, spilled over into wanting to be a good performer for GDQs and just streaming in general.
When did you start streaming?
I started streaming in 2012, I guess. 2011, when I went to SGDQ, I had not even thought of streaming myself. I just wanted to go and help out with the event and get to meet a lot of speedrunners, nerd out about the different speedruns. And someone there recommended, they were like, I really think you would do well as a streamer. This is still in fleggling years. It was people were popping off if they could get 10 viewers to watch.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of comments in the chat actually about the theater background and the performance and stuff like that. It's interesting because I shouldn't say assume, but watching streamers nowadays, seeing how comfortable some people get with their stream and being out there, putting yourself in public and stuff like that. When I first attended my first GDQ, I just assumed people were going to be as outgoing as they were on stream. And there's a surprising amount of introverts in the speedrunning community, like that. There's not many people who actually have a theater or performance background. It's one of the things I've always appreciated about your runs and your interviews and all that kind of stuff you do at GDQ, because you're so comfortable in front of the camera. That's not everyone. That's I almost feel like that's a minority in the speedrunning community. But I also genuinely get impressed, and this is me not trying to deflect that in any way, because I do have a lot of people on like you and many others where I say, I think we could do an interview with them. And all people think, oh, it's going to be awkward nerds, it's going to be a bunch of introverts. Right. And people actually, if you can talk to anyone about their passion, something they are passionate about, which instead might be, a Sega 32X game we can talk about. I get them to talk about the Zelda run that they got coming up in a little bit. They become surprisingly chatty. And I love that about people in general, is almost everyone out there has has a voice and like something they want to nerd out about and really talk about. And if you can just tap into that, all of a sudden they don't think about the fact that literally 150,000 people are watching you pick your nose and talk about Sega 32X games and actually be just completely lost in it. Yeah. This is a good comment. Paulie had in the chat says, I think people get chatty about their games because they never had that chance before. And I couldn't agree with you more, Paulie, because in my real life, almost nobody I know plays video games. I mean, trying to talk to my wife about video games, it's just she's just what the hell? I don't understand. What are you talking about? So it's I completely agree. That's I guess that's probably why I've been so attracted to the live events, because you get to talk to people about video games for a week. It's awesome. Yes. So when did, if I'm curious, when did you start doing some of the hosting or some of the other duties outside of doing a run at GDQ?
Yeah, so I had actually started a podcast.
Oh, cool.
With a couple of my friends, Golden and Sinister One. Darkman eventually came on to replace Sinister One, called The Final Split a number of years ago. And with that group of gentlemen, I had the idea, I was, I guess, one of the founders of the concept of we should do interviews at Games Done Quicks. Because I always thought I loved speedrunning at Games Done Quicks, but there was nothing going on in between runs. All of a sudden, you're looking at dudes' butt cracks as they're switching over cables And a lot of those weights back then, they've obviously become more efficient with it these days, but setups between runs used to sometimes take like 20 minutes to swap over some cables. And I said, you know what? We should fill the dead time. Again, always try to think from that entertainment background. How can we keep people entertained somehow, ideally at some point, 100% of the time? And so I said, I think like interviewing runners, just going over to a side table and talking about like, what are the speed runs we've seen today? What do we think of them? I think that would be cool. And I think it was SGDQ 2015, 2014. They actually had some people like I Ate Your Pie, I know, did a few interviews. 2015, myself, Golden, Darkman, a studio was involved. We decided, we had pitched to GDQ to do it, and they finally accepted it in 2015 to start having interviews in between. And I guess it's stuck ever since. It's something a little more than fluff, I think, to have between segments. And again, I like that it allows runners to get to sit up there and talk about not just being in the moment and playing your game and being intense about that, but also getting to express a little bit of who you are and what makes you tick and what sort of things you're into as a streamer. I think it's been beneficial for runners to sort of loosen up a little bit before they go up on stage in front of 150,000 people.
I also appreciate it because sometimes you do get some insight that, you might not be able to get in during the run as well. If there's one thing that's almost everybody who's been on the podcast has mentioned, and I would echo that sentiment, and that is that the runs go by so fast. You could be doing an hour run or whatever, but it's never enough time. It feels like your run just goes in the blink of an eye, So it's nice that there are these chances to kind of dig a little deeper dive and bring something extra, which I think is really nice. You've mentioned you've seen and been around a lot of GDQs. Are there any moments that stick out to you? There's like some of the high points or some of the memorable moments from all over almost a decade now. Jeez Louise, it's a decade of GDQs.
Yes, God, there are so many amazing different speed runs that have obviously happened, huge milestones. Obviously, like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the first time getting to be on the couch for the SGD or the AGDQ 2014 finale of Chrono Trigger, and we hit $1 million. That was just like a whole nother level where we were only a couple years removed from, yay, we raised 10,000. It was all of a sudden realizing that going from when I was little Spike Vegeta, I was a little kid, I feel like this is this completely niche thing I was into. Now all of a sudden, no, people love watching speedruns. People love watching video games and sharing their passion for it, but also raising that money for charity for the Prevent Cancer Foundation at the time and Doctors Without Borders over the years, Direct Relief, all these different charities. So definitely first time we hit 1 million, first time we hit 2 million, I believe during TGH's run of Undertale years ago. First time we hit 3 million just this past year.
Thought we were going to break windows and walls on that 3 million.
I know.
It was loud.
And there are more and more people there every year.
Right.
So you're like, well, we're going to keep someone up. In terms of speed runs that I have a lot of good memories of, I think any time we've had a punch out run at a GDQ, it was something to me when at that same GDQ where we broke the million, AGDQ 2014, Sinister One did his initial kind of legendary run. It wasn't his first run of the blind punch out, but it was the first one that really blew up. He got all the way to Tyson. And I remember I think it was Tony Reale, who's a host on some ESPN shows. He retweeted it or something.
Yeah, big time.
Or I was like, oh, we're starting to go as speedrunning kind of viral.
Yeah.
That's kind of insane to me. More and more people are realizing who we are and what we do. That definitely is a top moment for me, was all of Sinister and Zallard's runs.
AGDQ 2014 was the first one that I actually watched, and when I started seeing it, first time seeing it live, and I wonder if I came in on a tweet. I wonder if it just got retweeted. That's how I ended up there. This is a good question. Currently we're in this situation where we're still stuck at home. Things maybe are looking like they might be starting to change soon. But Cheese asks, do you have any opinions or thoughts about the near future of events with what's currently happening in the world? That's a really great question.
My biggest thing is I want everyone to be safe. That's going to be my biggest outlook. My fiance is actually immunocompromised to the whole thing.
Oh
So like
man, I'm so sorry.
we're a little
Yeah.
we're a little extra sensitive to
Dude,
the
for
whole
real.
subject.
Yeah.
So for me, I know personally, I there's going to be a wave where everything opens back up.
Sure.
People just say the world can only, the country right now can only stay closed for so long before it says, from an economic standpoint, we have to open.
Right.
We have to start making the machine work again. And so there's going to be a first wave of everything opening back up. And my biggest fear is then we're going to have a second wave come afterwards. Right. So I think about the fact that SGDQ already moved back once, is only about 3 months away right now from potentially happening.
Yeah.
I hope the world obviously is completely back to normal by that point, that people can go and feel safe. Things would definitely feel a little muted if you had to have a live event where every fourth or fifth chair had a person in it at all times, and everyone's wearing a mask, and you feel like it cannot be safe for everyone there. Obviously, and I'm just bringing up SGDQ right there. There are tons of events getting canceled right now. I love going to events. I know there are a lot of things involved with hotel contracts to where people can only get out of stuff for for at such level of ease. That being none, basically.
Yeah.
I feel for all the organizers. I feel for a lot of people in this pandemic, but I feel for all the organizers of how they're possibly going to make this stuff work. I feel like SGDQ could work as an online event, including other, obviously people talk about like fighting tournaments like Evo and whatnot, RPG Limit Break, but I know the world won't allow that at some point, and it's going to be something that probably hurts the internal structure for GDQs and other events for years to come. And I hope it's something we can recover from sooner rather than later. Hopefully I'm just being pessimistic, but we'll see.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm basically hoping for the best at this time. I will say that it's been nice to have so many online events come up and respond to this. I thought I participated in ESA, and they had a really cool approach. Treat it as if we were sitting there live, and so they asked you not to have the chat up, and you got some really interesting runs from that because people were treating it as if you were at a live event where you wouldn't have access to the Twitch chat and things like that. I thought that was a really cool approach to doing that. It was a really good way to do it. So
I hope we see a lot more really cool online events in general. People seeing like, okay, how creative we get with them, because
play
it's
with
been
the
similar
formats.
Structures over the years.
Yeah, actually,
absolutely.
totally agree. So that that gives me that. Let's bring it back a little bit then to your stream. You do quite a few different things on your stream. Most recently you just wrapped up. I'm gonna even screw up the name. MOM. What is MOMAM? MOMAM? Am I saying it correctly?
MOMAM.
Yeah,
MOMAM. Month of Mushrooms and Mayhem.
Yes.
Yeah. For this, we just wrapped up our 5th edition of a yearly event that myself and a good friend of mine was going to be the best man at my wedding if it was going to happen this year. He's still going to be the best man at my wedding.
Nice.
Something changes. But I ate your pie. He had an idea years ago where he was like, man, I was in his stream. Do you just want to like play games for a month? We'll do races and stuff. And at the time I was like, sure, not thinking about how big of an undertaking that was going to be, committing yourself to 1 month, every single day of races and whatnot. And we raced, the first year we did it was Month of Mushrooms and Master Sword specifically. We just did Mario and Zelda games. And since then we've expanded it to a bunch of other games. But we are both big college basketball fans. Obviously, we were very sad when March Madness got canceled this year. Dude. But having the basketball tournament, we love filling out the brackets, predicting who's going to win each basketball game, being horribly wrong by the end of the month. And so we thought, let's do it as well in March. We can put out brackets for people. Okay, Lat, you can decide, all right, in Super Metroid, who do you think is going to win between Spike Vegeta and I Eat Your Pie? And okay, but now Ocarina of Time, who's going to win between the two of us? And by the end of the month, whoever predicts the most correct and we've got like, I think to this point, close to 4,000 entries every year now. Whoever has the best bracket will win whatever our grand prize was. We've actually been doing a couple of high-end gaming PCs. that people can get a hold of
Damn.
at the end of these events. Yeah, because people are very generous during these. We're very fortunate, especially with what's going on.
Right.
That people have supported us so much. So we're able to give back a little bit with these big prizes, lots of, second and third place prizes and whatnot. But it's really just a time for us to chill. We do a lot of blind races. I find MOMAM has exposed me to a ton of games. So I think it's really easy as a speedrunner to be like, I've played like 5 total video games over the course of the last 3 years because I just speedrun and I binge a game and try to get better at it for a while. It's been nice actually going back. I feel like it's made me a better gamer. Same with Pi, to go back and get to play just casually through a lot of these games and kind of work your mind in different ways. Because I know for a while I felt like all I did was I played platformers.
Well, I got to tell you, it seems a little bit like a grind. I remember I'd wake up, you'd be streaming, and then I'd finish my workday, you'd still be streaming, and I'm like, and it was a different game and everything like that. So I'm like, damn, maybe he's putting in the time. But I was a little bummed that I only found it this year because I was like, the amount of games you bring to it, it's a plethora. There is a wide variety of games that you play during it, and that's got to be fun to just, like you mentioned, experience the games, maybe games you haven't even played before.
Yeah, one day you're playing a very good game, right. Some really solid like 2D platform like a Super Mario All Stars. The next day you're playing Superman 64 for the whole thing, and I guess that's somehow maybe a better gamer. Going back to what I was talking about.
Captain Harlock in the chat asks, Persona 5 Royale speedrun when?
Oh my God. I was actually, me and my fiance, we both just played through Persona 5 recently on stream. I played through it before her, and we were watching like lore videos and whatnot. I just had this thought, I wonder how Persona 5 Royale speedruns are developing right now. I wonder that with speedruns all the time, like Final Fantasy VII Remake I just played through. I've been paying attention to all the big skips they've been finding in that. I love seeing when speedruns initially drop and how they evolve over the first couple of months. I'm pretty sure Persona 5, the original, the world record is about 16 hours. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, I'm about to say, have you ever played a Persona game?
Okay, I haven't, but I've hosted for Persona 5 and Persona 4 3, but the music in Persona games are just, I never get tired of hearing the soundtracks are just so freaking good.
Oh, I've got one running through my head right now. God, I'm banging out to it.
Good. Do you have any of this year's month of Mayhem? Did you any games that stick out that you might consider doing a speedrun of, or some that you really enjoyed?
Oh gosh, there were a lot of really, really good games this month. My plate is so full with other games that I am running right now. I'm doing a bunch of other stuff. Runs. Okay, here's something that I actually really like doing. I recommend this to anyone who is into speedrunning whatsoever. As is, I'm passionate about speedrunning. Never is a speedrun more impressive than directly after you finish your casual playthrough. That is the time to go watch a speedrun. So something I actually have gotten into doing on my stream with people is I'll finish up playing a game casually, and then we'll, in my stream, just boot up the speedrun, give credit to whoever the world record holder is, and just watch the run. And we're going nuts. I just played through Shadow of the Colossus the other day. Watched through that run.
Game.
That's insane.
Yeah,
you see a boss that took you 30 minutes to figure out. They beat him in 12 seconds because they get on their arm, they flick up with some physics, and then stab him in the head and win. There's some really cool stuff. So a couple runs that I would do that with during MOMAM, Jack and Daxter is a super amazing speed run. The movement tech in that is insane. So many cool things that I obviously wasn't doing in my casual playthrough. They got lots of glitches and tricks, really well balanced run. I'm trying to think of another one that was really good. I thought Kirby's Adventure for the NES was a very fun game that I thought was a cool speed run. Lots of different routes you can do for that, a lot of different categories. Those are a couple that stood out to me as those were some of the more impressive speed runs I got to watch after playing them initially casually. Jack and Daxter would be cool to mess around with because I love movement tech. In general, I love speed runs. I don't know what I want to ask you. I want to reverse this.
Sure.
What attracts you to a speedrun? what about a game makes you go, oh, this looks like something that would be fun to run?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think I'm going to reiterate what you said. That's some of the best advice I've ever heard about starting the speedrun after you play the casual playthrough. I just had that experience recently. And I'm going to answer your question by having this.
Yeah.
So Castlevania Rondo of Blood. I've been playing through all the Castlevania games, and Rondo is awesome game. And I was like, it was just so much fun to learn the movement of how different characters play in that game. And so when I first started speedrunning, it was pick games that I like playing, which is, I still do that, by the way. I won't speedrun a game that I don't enjoy. But then secondly, the control of a character matters to me a lot. I don't have enough time, unfortunately, to speedrun RPGs, which is one of my I really want to take on an RPG at some point, and I will. But you know, there are a lot of different aspects to an RPG than there are to platformers. You know.
Yes.
And so, like, the movement of a character, if it's fun to play the game, play the character or the game, the controls, that's usually what attracts me. And I think that's interesting, the ones you're bringing up Kirby on Nintendo. It's fun to play Kirby. Like, it's fun fun to control Kirby as you're doing that, you know? So
yeah, there's a certain level of floatiness with it. And I find it with platformers in general is everything feels jank. People bring up the word jank all the time with games. I said a lot of fun with speedrun is learning how to master that jank.
Really?
Like, I can work around it and make someone like a Kirby look like it's got this really good flow to it when at first you're like, oh, I don't even know what I'm doing. Yoshi's Island. Yoshi has a specific level of jank that then could turn into a very beautiful level of flow once you've mastered it. So yeah, absolutely.
I could not agree with you more. And I'm getting me excited now because it's like, there's this game Splatterhouse that I played on the TurboGrafx 16 that, you know, Zallard was running and I'm like, dude, this looks like fun. How do you play this game? And because for the most part, it's just like, you know, it's a very straightforward beat 'em up. But then when you start learning the speedrun, there's all these intricate movements and to do it right and all this kind of stuff. And it makes it just, that's what gets me excited about speedrun, to say the least. So
that's a great speedrun. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this is a good one too. Captain Harlock asked in the chat, what about randomizer speedruns? General thoughts on them? Well, and I think that's one of those things, you know, Spike, I've seen you play randomizers on your stream and stuff like that. I think that's kind of an evolution of that, where you love a game. For me, I've only played Ocarina of Time randomizers, but because I'm so passionate and love the game so much, it's like a new way to play. The game almost feels new when playing them. I don't know.
Yeah, every time you get to play it, there's great quality of life. I've always loved Ocarina of Time, but I know one thing for me going back to it, I was like, man, these cutscenes.
Oh, dude, it's forever. It takes forever.
Early 3D era, the game devs didn't realize, we can make our cutscenes skippable, or we can make text scroll at literally faster than one character per second or per frame or whatever. So getting to just go through the game and every day think, all right, it's a big puzzle that I need to complete. Then you can do randomizers as speedruns. You can do them as just complete. It's a puzzle. I just need to beat it. That's it.
Right.
So there are a lot of people who still, I don't know whether it's old boy mentality or just not really thinking about it enough, who will say, randomizers aren't speedruns. If you're going to say that, then what's different with like any speedrun involving RNG is not a speedrun where, it's going to be different every time you do it, because that's all inherently that randomizers are. As long as I've always said, here's my definition of a speedrun. As long as you feel like the whole time you are trying to beat the game as fast as you can, that is a speed run you're doing. You don't have to get a certain time in it. The game doesn't have to fall under a certain rule set as long as the game can end at some point. So yeah, absolutely. I think randomizers can be speed runs. And I love the fact that speedrunning randomizers can ask you a lot more on your improv skills. Kind of like what I was talking about with live event speedruns, where there's just a lot of different things you have to consider. All right, I have this item now. What's the best play for me to go make? Do I go progress through certain dungeons I need to beat right now? Do I go towards item density? There's so much strategy involved, whereas speedrunning for the most part doesn't have a lot of strategy, just like a straightforward game. You're just going. You're just executing your strats. Like maybe you're considering whether you want to go for certain strats or not. But I feel like randomizers really work that part of your brain, that the strategic part of it, I guess, to see how you can get through it. I absolutely love that aspect of randomizer speedruns.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I've had two devs of one of the Super Mario RPG randomizer and others. Yes. And I'm glad you brought up the strategy part, because there are percentage plays you can get. Like there's a higher percentage chance of this item ending up in this place and things like that. Yes. And there have actually been some really interesting videos I've watched of people who, hey, here's my approach to speedrunning a randomizer. And I think to your point, it's, hey, you're just trying to beat the game as fast as you can. Like that's
yes.
I speedrun golf, for Christ's sake, you know? So it's like, yes. You can speedrun anything. It doesn't have to matter or anything like that. Mm-hmm. This is a good question. Captain Harlock is actually a game developer, and he goes, you know, if he wanted to make a game speedrunnable, would it be beneficial to bring in a speedrunner of that genre? And I think that's a fascinating question. I'm going to hit it up right before you, real quick. And then we had Munchie Koopas on, and he was, he's a speedrunner of Shovel Knight when he was working there. And you know, I don't think it could be more beneficial to have somebody who speedruns your game while working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a scary line to walk, because speedrunning, I definitely think you can plan for speedrunning.
Right.
I look at particularly Matt Makes Games, the Celeste devs, that they really understood speedrunning. I think the best thing you can do for speedrunners is just make the game fun and give us tools. Mm-hmm. Give us fun movement. Give us good level design. Don't necessarily worry about building in like, oh, here's a skip we built into the game that you can do or anything. Let us get creative and find that stuff. But give us a fun playpen to work in. Like Celeste, the rooms are so open. You can get so creative with how you move through them that we're going to find a fun speed run. I think there are definitely a lot of indie devs in particular who have tried to make like, oh, this is the speed run mode or whatever. And sometimes that actually removes a lot of the creativity. I think a lot of great speed runs are not great speed runs because the devs didn't necessarily intended for them to be. It's by complete accident. Yeah. I think there are some terrible video games out there that turn out to be great speed runs. People bring up all the time. Sonic 06.
Sonic 06, yeah, exactly.
Absolute dumpster fire of a video game. But as a speed run, it actually works really well. Totally, it's got a lot of creative, fun glitches. The movement's still fun in it. So yeah, and sometimes the best games out there, I would say, are not great speed runs necessarily. So it's a hard line to toe, but the biggest thing I think as a dev going into it, yeah, if you can bring on someone who does understand speed running, maybe, play test your game a little bit and whatnot. I think Munch Kubas is a great addition to Yacht Club Games over there doing Shovel Knight and whatnot. I think the biggest thing is give us good tools.
Right.
Give us a lot of options to work with and see if there's some balance within those options. And then let us go. Let's see what we can figure.
I think that's such a good, because part of the fun of speedrunning is finding out, ways to do things and do it interesting ways. Couldn't agree with you more. I would also say that I played through Katana Zero recently, and they had an interesting, they had a speedrun mode, but all it did is cut out the cutscenes. And I'm like, that's a good way to do it.
Yes. That's a very simple way to just be, okay. I actually love the concept of that. Here's just something for your casual playthrough where like, I'm big into lore and stories. I play through games like obviously Persona 5 and the Phoenix Wright games. I think people have this perception outside the community that speedrunners don't care about stories. They don't care about anything going on with that. It's like, no, we do. We're gamers just like you. We're just like, now on my 45th playthrough of the game, I don't necessarily want to watch the cutscenes again. Like, it's great that like we can skip the cutscenes or they're just skipped automatically. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. Bringing this back a little bit, you do some really interesting things with your stream, and the most recent one I found, but I know it's been around now for just a little bit, is the Speedrunning Underground. What exactly is Speedrunning Underground? Tell us a little bit about that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Speedrunning Underground. So I have had a great passion, more so, I would say, even than speedrunning myself, is gaining that knowledge about speedruns. Like you see, like I love doing commentary for all sorts of different speedruns. I've done runs I've done commentary for runs at GDQs like Ratchet and Clank, a game that I've actually never played, but I just had Zem92. He actually reached out to me and asked, oh, would you mind being on the couch for it? And I said, I would love to learn about your run and just provide my voice, even if I'm the role of dumb guy. So myself and one of my best friends, JHobs296, we decided we should do a speedrunning racing show every week, where some weeks we have on games that we know by heart, a Kingdom Hearts 2, a 3D Mario or something, a Crash Bandicoot, but also some weeks, let's have on something like Sly Cooper we had on a few weeks ago, a game we've never run. We got to go out this week and do research, watch commentary, piece together notes and whatnot, and then get to showcase a game at different levels. We have little prize pools with it where people can throw down subs and bits, and half of that will go to both the runners that we have racing game, just to kind of spice things up a little bit so that they feel like they have a little more to play for. Yeah, and it's been a ton of fun. We've had, I believe we're coming up on 70 episodes.
Oh, wow.
We got the big meme number coming up of all sorts of different games over the years. Yeah, it's been a ton of fun to get to showcase a bunch of different stuff and a bunch of different communities and a bunch of different runners. Every week we reach out to people that are like, oh, I've never even heard of this. I'm like, love it.
And I love bringing a different format to speedrunning. I think, you know, especially in the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of experimenting with different types of formats and things like that. And, you know, Mitch just wrapped up an SMB3 tournament where he had a point system and he gave away a cash prize. I think, you know, as much as there is an option for speedrunners, some people can do full-time streaming and things like that. There aren't very many opportunities to play for cash and things like that. And while a lot of us, you know, do this for fun, it's nice that there is something else to play for, you know, than just necessarily, you know, winning a race or whatnot. And I think that's kind of interesting aspect that you brought to it. I think it's made it really fun and exciting at times.
God, I'm thinking about you talk about that with Mitch. I'm like, I have been wanting to have tournaments on my stream for a long time, just like a little invitational, bring 16 people on and do some silly race or something, some silly little tournament. Yeah, that's cool. Mitch has done that. I didn't know.
No, it's really fun. And other ways, I mean, you know, Prosentia does the Cusa Grande thing, which is he's got hundreds of people now signing up for it. I mean, it's insane. You know?
Where Superman 64 is a great video game. They're so excited to get to play all those terrible games. I love that there's a subsect of the speedrunning community who's super into that. Cool.
So one of the ways that I've learned to do some research in a short amount of time is to look over your all-time clips. Like, what are the things that people have clipped on your stream? And holy cow, is yours like a roller coaster of emotion watching your clips? There are just some sad, bad beats during that one. But you know, what kind of games do you you know, have you thought about what kind of games, speedruns you want to do in the future and things like that? Are you going to continue? I've noticed a lot of your speedruns are longer games, the games that are over an hour stuff. Have you speedrun any shorter games ever like that, or ever wanted to do anything like that?
No, I appreciate runs of a lot of different lengths. For whatever reason, maybe it's because I have a streamer mentality where it's nice to kind of fill up longer streams. 3 hours has kind of become a sweet spot for me. I really like the Super Mario Odyssey darker side category. It's right there, a little over 3 hours. A couple of the Kingdom Hearts runs that I run are right about 3 hours. Super Mario Galaxy that I ran was about 3 hours. Messing with some of the Dark Souls games because I'm slow are around 3 hours. So I don't know if there's something that particularly attracts me to that length of time. I've also done runs that are, around like 30 minutes. Mega Man 2, I got really into for a while. Donkey Kong Country, about a 35-minute run for me at the time. Donkey Kong Country 2, around a 40-minute time. Yeah, so then I've also on the other end of the spectrum, I've run Final Fantasy 9. It's like 9 hours.
Yeah, it takes forever.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I guess I have found a lot of appreciation for different lengths. It's just kind of scheduling and planning out what I can do with them. Obviously, you run longer games. Resetting's not really you're just like, oh, I'm doing FF9. I forget what his name is, but it's got like war in the title or something. But he's a Final Fantasy X world record holder. He got to like the end of a run. That is a 10-hour speed run.
Oh no.
Got like 9 hours in and went, oh, this run's bad. And reset and started over and finished a run and got world record in that one.
Oh my God. How do they do that?
That's somehow more insane than stuff I do. Yeah.
Have you ever considered returning to a run that you maybe ran years ago? You've got Kingdom Hearts on here. You've got all these things.
Oh God. I'm actually trying to catch up on incentives right now. And then once those incentives are done, I told people I've got my top 5 projects, which are all return projects. Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, Tropical Freeze, Super Mario Odyssey, Darker Side, and Final Fantasy 9. And then after that, I've got DKC 2 looks really cool to go back to. DKC 1 has a no major glitches category, which removes a lot of the frame perfect BS that you have to worry about when you do just an all stages run. I'm like, I kind of want to get into that. I wish there were more hours in the day. That's the truth. Yeah, all my speedruns. Rayman Legends I've thought about going back to. Rayman 1 I thought about going back to. If I had all the time in the day, I would go back to all of them and just say, like, yes. There was a stream just a couple days ago where I did 5 different speedruns in a day of 5 completely different games and 5 different IPs and everything. And it just felt really good for my soul.
Yeah. Close to War is the world record holder for Final Fantasy.
Close to War, that's right. Yeah.
Also, Epic Neon Ninja Monkey in the chat. I know he's a DKC runner, and it's one of those things where it sounds like you never leave DKC. It's it's too good of a game.
It is, yeah, absolutely, and it's an easy one to pick back up. I feel like you can generally get back into them pretty quickly. So it's nice to feel like you've got to run with basically no downtime, like a Donkey Kong Country, where you're just going the whole time. You're even skipping the little fanfares afterwards to jump into the next level. I love that about that game.
Nazim says, DKC doesn't let you leave. Well, there you go.
There you go.
This came up a couple times, and I think I do want to touch upon this just a little bit, that commentary and commentating on runs and stuff like that, it seems like it comes very natural to you, even if you are the guy. I remember watching a GDQX run where you were on the couch, and it's not a game that you had played a lot of, but you brought something, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? You're having a conversation with the runner. How did you, what are some tips, or how did you evolve your commentary or commentating, approach and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to realize when you go up for commentary is that there are a bunch of different genres of commentary you can give. So one I brought up right there was I'm dumb guy. I think Mike Uyama, kind of the original, the creator, the owner of GDQs, he kind of came up with that concept of, hey, I sat on couches and I just asked questions. That was it. Because I think it's really easy when you're doing a speed run that you've done maybe thousands of times, literally, that you kind of forget just little things about it that you do in the run all the time and ask. So having someone there to ask, why do you do that? And you go, oh yeah, we do this because it speeds this up or something. And that's a question that probably 90% of the audience had, but they don't get to have that voice up there and ask. So sometimes realizing, do you just kind of fit that role? Do you fit more, play-by-play, color guy, if anyone's into watching sports casters and whatnot? I think the biggest thing is, the biggest piece of advice I always try to give people is realize how to not over-explain things. Because to a lot of people watching, even if they are a gamer, a lot of it can go over their heads. Right. So I'll take, let's say I'm commenting a Sonic the Hedgehog level. Sonic, believe it or not, goes very fast. So there are probably 15 minute little details you can bring up in playing through Green Hill Act 1. But if you try to explain all of them, it's all going to get lost, and none of it's going to stick. I say take a level, maybe a 30-second, 1-minute level, find 1 to 2 things, the biggest details about the level, and try to, as you're building up to it. Okay, so we're coming here into Green Hill Act 1. Now, halfway through this level, there is going to be this one enemy that is going to be very annoyingly just directly in the path. What we're going to try to do throughout the level now is move in a very specific way to make sure that the camera cycle loads them on at a slightly later time, so that now we can get right past them before they get in their position. And looks like they just hit it, and all right, there we go. Nice. We've hit it. I think there is a lot of understanding how to set something up as a commentator and then have that direct showcase, the visual showcase, so then a viewer goes, I knew exactly what they were building up to, and then I saw it, and now my brain has been able to paint this picture, as opposed to going backwards, where you say, now back there, he actually hit this frame perfect trick where he did this jump. And to me, I have no visual in front of me. So unless I'm going to rewind the video, I'm not going to know what you're talking about. And I'd rather you just talk about other stuff that's coming up soon. I think that's the biggest I guess the two. That's kind of
Yeah.
two-winded right there, twofold. Making sure you space out your commentary to know this is the one or two things I'm going to talk about in a given level or a given boss fight or whatever that might be, and then how to set up commentary as opposed to go backwards with commentary.
I think that's a great approach, and I got this advice early on when I started streaming, was that just first of all, just start talking about your gameplay and what you're trying to do, like you just described, And so if you try that on stream, naturally, if you're not even playing the game, it might even be you have way less to do than So, but it's a good great. That's the way I've practiced and to approach those things. I think that's a really good approach to all that.
Absolutely.
Let's see if it's true. You get a time, then go. I can still do better. I know that's the speedrunner plate. Epic the Asian Bunker say, yeah, you can always do better, But that's that's part of it. I thank you so much for taking some time and going through all this stuff, and thanks for asking questions in the chat, folks, because this is it's nice to hear a little bit more about yourself, because we hear your voice, we see you all the time on GQs and on your stream and stuff like that, but it's nice to know where you're coming from and a little bit of your approach. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
If people want to check you out, where can people find you on the internets?
They can find me on twitch.tv/spikevegeta. SPIKEVEGETA. Yeah, people can watch me there. I've been doing a little more, I guess, work. I got so many incentives out of the way last month that I built up from doing MOMAM. This month, I'm getting to work that speedrun, sport those speedrun nerves, that structure inside of me, my speedrunning heart, trying to come up with some anatomy.
Yeah, right. Something poignant. No, who cares?
Yeah. I'm doing like stuff like 3D Mario. I'm doing the 1120 of 3D Mario coming up, which is 120 star from SM64, 120 shine from Super Mario Sunshine, and 880 moons from Super Mario Odyssey, all back to back to back. It's gonna take me like 18 hours. We'll do that next weekend. Working on building some casual routes for the Dark Souls trilogy, because we're doing a race of that at the end of the month. Working on Kingdom Hearts speedruns, because there are various events I'm doing those for coming up. So yeah, it's as usual with my stream schedule. It's going to be loaded. We're going to do DK64 101% here in a couple hours for Pizza Fest with the no tag barrel mod, if anyone knows Donkey Kong 64, where you can just swap Kongs willy-nilly as you go. Hoping that speeds it up by hours. We'll see. So, yeah, lots of speedrun and speedrun light content, I like to call it, coming up on the stream here pretty soon. But yeah, and you can see me there on Games Done Quick at most all those events. Yeah,
speaking of that, I do have to ask, did you submit anything to any to SGDQ this year?
I did. Okay, I submitted Zooter co-op.
Yeah, there you go.
With my good friend Fant. We thought co-op was a good way to represent it. We actually did run that at this past CRDQ, Corona Relief Done Quick online event. We raised $400,000 for direct relief, obviously going towards that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and we thought it was a hit. We thought we did a really good job. Our commentary worked really well. Just got to get even more people into Zooter. I know you said you got into it as well.
Yeah.
There are over 40,000 people in the Zooter Discord, which is absolutely insane.
The amount of options that you can specify, you can pretty much have any sort of randomizer experience you want.
Yes.
It's insane.
Yeah, if there are things you don't want to do, turn them off. If there are extra enhanced things like more checks in the game you want to do, you want song sanity, you want Skulltula sanity, you want the shops to be completely randomized. You can do whatever you want to that game. I love how customizable it is, like a really good board game. I can view good randomizers as. So.
One more question, and I almost forgot to ask this one. Is there an origin story to Spike Vegeta? Is there how did you get your screen name? Or if you could even share it. I don't even know.
No.
Okay.
This will be the shortest answer of the day.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I was 10 years old, and I really liked Cowboy Bebop and Dragon Ball Z. And so I went to go make a username on some website. I think it was like a Dragon Ball Z collectible card game website. And I liked Spike, Spiegel, and Vegeta. I really liked both those characters. So I slapped Spike and Vegeta together. And 32-year-old me in 22 years has never went to go change that. So I guess I must have been a little older than 10 if that was, yeah. No, actually 10 was probably about right. Yeah, that's about when that stuff would have been coming out in the States and whatnot. So
you've been stuck with this for over 20 years now.
Yes, and I'm never going to change it.
You can't.
I always thought to myself, if I could ever go back and change my name, all I would have done was just call myself Spike fajita.
Oh man.
Right,
Missed it
right,
on, dude.
Yeah, like, isn't that a great name?
Yes.
Like,
Oh my God.
Genuinely, like, I think that would be a really cool username. I've seen people take it when I bring that story up all the time. But yeah, I'm sticking with it. Spikevegeta till the day I die. That's going to be my username. I'll be 50 years old, still doing commentary for Games Done Quick. They'll still be like, there's still a username up there that is literally 2 anime characters slapped together. Which is really funny for me because I don't hate anime in any way. I've watched like 5 total anime, but that's slapping together 2 of them that I've watched. So
okay, one more quick last question because Epic, Epic brings up a good point, and I'll bring up a really quick story. He asked Spike Vegeta about the TurboGrafx 16. I got to tell you, one of the things that impressed me a bunch because, the only thing forgive my ignorance, but I wasn't too familiar with your stream when I first met you. I knew you as the guy who's on, Games Done Quick all the time, So, but when he came to the interview, he had done his research and he had, I don't know if you were familiar with the TurboGrafx 16 before we chatted, but I was really impressed with your knowledge of the console and the system. Have you ever played anything on the TurboGrafx 16?
I've always wanted to play it. I've had a lot of people tell me, who do a lot of blind racing and like mystery tournaments and whatnot. They said the TurboGrafx 16 is the best console that 12 total people have played.
Nobody's ever heard of.
Like the library is actually insanely good. They said they think it was stronger back in the 90s than the Sega Genesis library, which I actually already like the Genesis library early.
Yeah.
They said like, yeah, there's 40 or 50 great gems that people just don't know. I've never known if they've ever done like a TurboGrafx, like they do packages all the time. Right. A collection of like Genesis classics. Has there ever been one for the TurboGrafx 16? Because I feel like I would love to play through a lot of those games.
NEC, and I don't even remember who owns it now. It's Konami, I think, owns it. But no, or Capcom. Capcom owns it. Okay, but Konami. But no, they do have they have it. It's on the Virtual Console, so we do have games on the VC. But,
okay, that's right.
And they just came out with the Mini, but because of what's happening in the world, it's been a very slow rollout. They haven't been able to produce as much, but. Konami. It is Konami. Okay, yeah. So they're So we might be seeing more of it if the console is popular, the Mini, which it sounds like it's done okay. So, but it's like you're saying, we find similar people we've found who are passionate about it. So we huddle together and we enjoy supporting it and stuff like that. And I think there's been because of the Virtual Console, we have seen more runners show up, thankfully, because of it. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I'm glad to see GDQs have kind of made different corners of the schedule. Obviously, you could show Mario and Zelda all day and make a lot of money, but I think it's cool that they've looked out what are some like different corners of the speedrunning community we can play towards. I think it's awesome that TurboGrafx 16 has had a run in each of these last couple
absolutely.
And hopefully those keep going. And yeah, like I said, I every time I've watched the TurboGrafx 16 run into GDQ, I think, man, these games look really good. And I feel like probably 12 total people. Yeah.
That's about it. That's our average. I would say that's about it. Although I will say that every time there is a run at GDQ, 2 or 3 people show up in the Discord, and we see a new runner join a bonk game or something. Yeah. So it's been great for us. I'll take an extra runner. That's a huge percentage of our community.
Yes, I was about to say there are a lot of speedrunning communities out there. Yeah, you got Super Mario 64 and Odyssey and Ocarina.
Right.
They're like, we got 2,000 people. But then like a lot of games are like, we just got a 4th runner.
It's awesome. We love it.
Someone that isn't a bronze medalist on speedrun.com. It's awesome.
Thanks everyone for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, subscribe, leave a review. All those things go a long way to helping out the podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'm on Twitter @LatMackey, or you can also join the LatMackey Discord, where we have a sequence break channel. We talk about guests, we have questions. It's really interactive, really fun. Please feel free to stop on by. Thanks so much. See you in the next one.